Welcome back to Algebra. I don't think I need to speak about the buzz tonight because the buzz in the room and outside is palpable. You're obviously looking forward to this evening as much as we are. And why should we not be? Because both men slated to take the stage tonight have an extraordinary arc to their lives. It's not one-dimensional, it is complex. It encompasses the range of human achievement and emotion, but also failure and redemption. And that makes for the best kind of stories. But before we actually get into those stories, as always, there are people to thank who make Algebra possible. If the quality of your partners speaks for the quality of what you do, then we're in the finest hands. As always, thank you first and foremost to the space that makes this possible. Thank you to the Oberoi Gurgaon. I don't think I need to say much about the Oberoi. They're one of the finest hotel chains in the country, but above all, the Oberoi Gurgaon is one of the finest hotels in the country. It is home to fabulous restaurants, wonderful architecture, and if anything embodies the spirit of Gurgaon, it is this hotel. Thank you to the Oberoi for having us, and we hope to see a lot more of you. Thank you, of course, as always, to our returning partners at Sanctum Wealth Management. Thank you very much to Terra. And thank you, as always, to the Glenlivet. You know, there's well, for some reason, there's any number of proverbs about whiskey, but there's one in particular that says, what whiskey has no cure for, there is no cure for. Obviously, all of you in this room are taking no chances tonight because I see a lot of full glasses. Thank you to the Glenlivet for always enabling Algebra from our first evening 2.5 years ago. A few house notes and rules before we dive into the conversation. One, we're not taking a break between the conversations today. You will have an opportunity to have books signed afterwards. Rajat will be signing books at the end of the conversation. I know a few of you have brought DVDs for Shekhar to sign, and he will be happy to sign those as well. About phones. So I said this at another Algebra evening, and I'll say it here. If you have a ringtone we've not heard before, feel free to leave it on and add to the entertainment of the evening. But if we have heard your ringtone, let's listen to the speakers instead. The books, as I mentioned before, are outside. We also will have a slight change in format. You'll see Shekhar up on stage first, and we hope to bring him back later for a bit of an extended conversation, but more on that as the evening progresses. First, for the first conversation, it's my privilege to introduce your host for this conversation. She is the former editor of India Today. She's also the first female editor of India Today because they took their time getting there. She calls herself a struggling editor, a struggling writer, but if that's what struggle looks like, I want in. Welcome to Kaveri Bamzai.
Thank you, Payal. I was a struggling editor too, so I guess that makes it square. Thank you all for being here. It's my privilege to introduce someone I've known for almost as long as he's been trying to make water, or pani. I think you all know of that movie. And it's a long-standing joke between us. But really, he's an actor, director, cultural commentator, cultural entrepreneur, and a generator of the most quotable quotes, some of whom we'll hear today, I hope. But more than that, I think what makes him truly remarkable in a culture that worships success is that he embraces failure. And I love that. And I love that he's able to still be a sex symbol, I think. I have to tell you that I was interviewing recently two IPS officers of somewhat the same vintage as I am. And I asked them, so what made you join the IPS? And they said, well, Udan was a factor. So I said, Kavita Chaudhary? They said, no, Shekhar Kapur. We all wanted to have an IAS officer for a boyfriend as he was. Anyway, here, Shekhar, please do come up. As you can see, still as charming as ever. Yes, please do.
Hello.
Shekhar, for you, the personal has always been the political, and you've always rejoiced in bashing cultural icons, whether they're Elizabeth or whoever. What do you think of Bollywood right now? How political is Bollywood, and how Bollywood is politics?
Okay, let me answer your first question. Yeah? Cultural bashing? all art is rebellion. And so you rebel. Anything that there is, you just rebel. And in rebellion, you find your artistic voice. Because what is, right? But what is not, or what could be, or what might be, or what you'd like to be, is the story you want to tell, right? So that's a huge rebellious idea. So your second question, Bollywood's not rebellious enough.
Yes, it isn't.
They're not rebelling. As long as empirical data, I'm sure a lot of you are management consultants here. A lot of you, like me, I was a chartered accountant once. You more and more realized that in a world of uncertainty, empirical data means nothing. But we've always known that as creative people, that the most boring thing you can put out is empirical data. That which succeeded last year, and we put it out again this year. But what is the most exciting thing in all of creativity is that never existed. So if I see a painting, Van Gogh painted the sunflower. You know why? Because his brother said, if you want to make money, paint landscapes. But you stand in front of the sunflower and you see how angry he was. In the very brushstrokes, when you look at it, you can sense the vibrations of the brushstrokes. So even the sunflower was a rebellious act, even though his brother said, come on, let's make some money. You paint something in landscape, and he painted that. And that survives. You can actually sit in front of that painting and sit there for hours and feel the anger that he was feeling. Bollywood doesn't do that. We are, somebody came to me and said, why don't you make Mr. India 2? And I said, why? And they said, because we'll give you 200 crores to make it, 250 crores. I said, why? They said, because we'll make it in the first 3 weeks, we'll make the money back. 3 weeks, I said, people are still seeing that film 30 years later, and you want me to make a film that runs 3 weeks? So that's the problem. It's all about the first weekend. It's all about how can we make our money quickly and get out, make it quickly and get out. So it's rather like how startups started first in India. All the entrepreneurs came here and said, let's get a quick exit, and we destroyed the startup business, right? Please say right. It did happen, right? And now people are now getting a little more, they have more trust in the Indian economy, so they're making long-term plans. We need more trust in our audiences. We have lost faith in our audiences. And so what happens? When you make food that is so spicy, you get people used to that. But where's the finesse of food? Where's the ultimate art of food? Where's the ultimate art of filmmaking? That's what suffers.
You didn't answer the question of how much Bollywood there is in politics. There's a lot of theatrical stuff happening there, right?
They'll delve in politics if there's money in it. It's box office, they'll put into politics. Of course they will. That's it.
Are you angry enough right now, angry enough to make a movie like Bandit Queen? Because that was pure, raw anger. And those fault lines still exist and perhaps are more magnified now.
Yeah. Don't get fooled by my smile or my charm.
Really, so actually seething inside.
I'm really angry inside. I'm seething, yeah.
No, but seriously, do you need anger to make something that moves you or moves people?
You need some emotion to drive you beyond what you think your limits are. It's not going to be reasonable. If you want to go beyond where you think you end or beyond, or you want to go outside the bounds, you have to be unreasonable. You have to go beyond reason. Otherwise, you're stuck in the box of reason and you'll keep bouncing within that box. So how do you become unreasonable? You have to find your way. My way is rebellion. That's how my way is driving. And every time I made a film, I told a friend of mine who's a big spiritual guru, I said, I'm really upset. He said, Shekhar, don't you understand? That's what you do to yourself. That's what you do to feel angry and to drive yourself creativity. So now I've come to accept that anger drives me, rebellion drives me, as it should. Something, right? Must drive you. So you just have to cross over those hurdles. And the bigger the hurdle, the harder you have to try. And then the more you become unreasonable, and the more different you are.
Is there a space in this new technology, in this era of OTT platforms, Netflix, Amazon, for anger, for filmmaking that's different, for TV series that, compel you to not look away, to make you uncomfortable? Or are we we've also sort of sanitized that ugliness and made it sort of, pretty enough to be watched in the confines of your home, on your smartphone, on your laptop?
I think one of the things, and the best thing Netflix has done is their documentaries. Not so much their features. They've done some few features that are really, really good, but I really enjoy watching the documentaries that are coming in because you have access to some of the best documentaries in the world. But, when you become a gatekeeper, what Netflix did was destroyed Hollywood almost. And Hollywood were the gatekeepers. Now Netflix are the gatekeepers. I'm already hearing from people, let's go present this to Netflix. Let's go present it to that. So Netflix, time for Netflix to be destroyed. And it will be destroyed because technology is changing everything all the time. By the time you've just finished your engineering degree, you're out of date. Technology has changed. I was at a conference, I was talking to a conference in Sydney. They invited me as a chartered accountant. I'd forgotten I was a chartered accountant. Can you believe it? And I said, so I couldn't decide what to say. At the last minute, 10,000 people sitting there saying, so how valuable, how valid is your balance sheet? Because by the time it's printed, you're out of date. It's true. Anything, So we are in that world of absolute uncertainty, which is very exciting and very threatening. But we've always been in that world, only it took more time. That's all. It was always uncertain. Now it's uncertain, like that, like a heartbeat.
Which brings me to something you said about 12 years ago, that the Googles and Pixars of the world would soon be rendered obsolete by some great ideas that would come out of Asia. So far, I've only seen TikTok, and that's out of China, and that's not very revolutionary. What has been really the Asian revolution in technology all about?
China and Japan have proven that we can do it. China definitely has done it by protecting their own companies, obviously, but there's a lot, not just in entertainment things, but in 3D printing, in so many technologies, China is doing it. We have a fundamental problem. Our education system is still making us babus. That's what the British left us with. We have to become the IP nation. We shouldn't, right? We talked about it all the time, remember? We were talking that how do we become the IP creating nation rather than the babu nation? When I was here studying in Delhi in St. Stephen's College, my mother said, "Bete, oil company join kar lo. Ya multinational join kar lo." And I said, "Uske baad Gymkhana club mein jaoge, billiards kheloge, अच्छी जिंदगी होगी." And I said,
Golf khelenge?
Huh?
Golf bhi khelenge?
Golf, though she knew I would never had the patience for. So, somebody else's game. Because that's how life was considered here. If you have a job, you're fine. Now we shouldn't. We have to become the IP creating nation. We have to become the risk taking people. We have to train everybody to be a job creator, not a job seeker. Then we'll change. That's
You're sounding like Narendra Modi.
He said that?
Yes.
I said that to him.
Many times.
But I said that to him.
Okay. So that's your IP that he's stolen.
Okay.
No, but seriously, there are no jobs, there are not enough ideas, there are not enough original ideas going around. Isn't that so? That's why we end up with pakora economics.
No, there are enough original ideas. The financial sector has to recognize them, and the financial sector also has to become part of those risk-taking of the original ideas. The financial sector today is still not doing enough.
That's all the people sitting here.
Yeah, rest, please applaud if you do want to. That's the financial sector is not even applauding me for saying that. Okay, all right.
But how can technology help us right now in the stories that we're telling ourselves and we're telling the world? What can we do to get our stories across in the way that we ought to? We still don't carry the weight that we ought to.
Well, let's not be arrogant about our stories getting across. Because storytelling is not storytelling, it's story encouraging. And that's where we go wrong. In fact, I'm at MIT right now looking at storytelling in the new technologies. And the first thing I have to tell everybody, forget what you think about stories. Forget it. It's not storytelling. What is a story? If we don't tell our stories, we don't exist. Our existence is based on the stories we tell, right? When when man first saw lightning, how did he perceive lightning? Or she perceived lightning? By a story. वो इंद्र है, वो नाराज है, वो lightning आ रही है, यहाँ हमने कुछ गलत किया है. We evolved mythology in order to relate ourselves to the infinite ideas that we don't understand. And out of that came storytelling, to relate us to the idea of the infinite, because that's, so we needed to make things finite for ourselves. So all perception of anything is our brain, our mind trying to create something finite, a relationship between you and me, or me and this box right now. Oh, look, that's a box. That's a story. I'm trying to make my relationship with that box finite. And yet, if I go into particle physics, there's no difference. We're the same. We're the same energy. Everything's the same. But that's how we know, and that's how we perceive. All perception is storytelling, and all perception is virtual. That's what I'm trying to understand. And when we talk about virtual reality, our perception of the universe is virtual reality because it's all virtual, right? Because it's all perception. Your perception of any point in this whole room is not my perception of any point in this whole room, correct? Because you carry with yourself a whole story of your life, and you will perceive that, this box, right now. And in that, in your perception and your relationship with this box, will be influenced by the story of your life. So how can your perception, because I don't have the story of life, I have the story of my life. So all perception, no one person's perception of the same thing is the same. So it's all a story.
The best stories right now are, and I think the most compelling, are those that are most authentic and even sometimes most specific, whether you take Roma or anything actually that Netflix is doing. Look at Narcos. I mean, it's a story that no one in the world should relate to, but everyone watches it. Why have we not been able to take the specific in us global? I mean, the Rays and Renalsens of the world did it. Why have this generation of filmmakers not been able to do that to that extent?
Because we've redefined what cinema is. We are more and more looking at cinema as a big ride, like we're in a theme park. And we think about it as, but we forget that there's something called the heart inside it, and we forget the kernel. But like I made Bandit Queen, I did not go out to make something that I thought. But then when I got into that film, I realized that it was my fault. What happened to her was also my fault, because I was living just 100 miles away from where it all happened, and I saw it on the third page. Why did I not do anything about it? And I was making that, I was angry. I was angry at myself. So if you ever see Bandit Queen, you'll find me angry at myself, and that made it a powerful film, because I brought my anger at myself into that. So, thank you.
It also got Arundhati Roy very angry.
We all have our own perception. You know?
I remember the piece that she wrote, the Great Indian Rape Trick.
Rape trick, yeah.
Yeah, clever play of words, but I think the rape and the violence that was inflicted on Poolan, that really upset her. When you look back at it, what do you think about the way you handled it?
There's no film that I've ever seen that I don't regret that I didn't make it differently.
Really?
Yeah, because you move into your life. You're a different person. Now looking back and said, I should have listened to my editor. You know, you're constantly, "Arey, ye shot bahut lamba chal raha hai. Kyun nahi kaata?" Editor very keh rahi thi, "Kaato, kaato, kaato." Maine nahi kaata. But because I was in love with my shot. Because that was then. It was too recent in my heart and in my mind. And my editor was right. So, yeah, but would I have made it differently? Of course I would have. I'm now, you know. I was then. Does that make sense? I was, yeah.
I had my editor who would always tell me when he changed his mind, but that was me then, this is me now, so I understand
There you are.
completely.
Right.
I think men of a certain vintage always use that excuse.
I've always done that. In fact, I'll tell you a little thing. I'm an obsessive planner. I may not look like it, I look chaotic.
Yeah. And you love to embrace chaos, according to whatever you've said.
That is also my story. Yeah, it's true. But I'm an obsessive planner when I get to the sets. What panics me most is the fact that I planned everything. So where's the act of God? Where's that moment? Because whatever I planned was that moment. So often I'll go to the sets and panic myself. What often? I'll do it all the time. And I'll say, Aaj sabko malum pad jayega. You've cornered the whole world into thinking you can direct. And today I'm going to, every time I just go and say, okay, now today they're going to get
You'll
caught.
be discovered.
I'll be discovered as this great con man. And, but I do it every time. Every day I'll do that. And if that doesn't work, I listen to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and I listen to, to his kind of chaos and understand that. And so there comes a time when your mind gets out of the way. And when your mind gets out of the way, you allow something to come in that is not yours. And that is not yours, where does it come from? It's the now of this moment. You can call it faith, you can call it God, you can call it anything. That's amazingly creative. But like in every company or anything, there are 200 people watching me and said, sir, what's the next shot? I'm in a state of panic, smiling. So then you go to Kate Blanchett. Kate, what do you think? What do you want to do? Actually, you're just making up your mind. You're waiting for that moment.
Shekhar, I've always meant to ask you, there's this Shekhar Kapur school of filmmaking somehow that has created all these wonderful film stars, whether it was Heath Ledger, sadly we lost him, Kate Blanchett, Wes Bentley. What is that quality that, even I guess Urmila Matondkar, she was a child star in Masoom, right? So what is that one quality that you see in a person that makes you cast them and which has clearly created stars?
So which story do you want me to tell?
Whichever one is most exciting.
Okay. Because eons ago, Kate and I had met many, many lifetimes ago and said, one day we'll work together. Is that a good story? No. Okay, so, yeah. Many lifetimes. But now, for example, in Elizabeth, I was looking for somebody that could look like she belonged to history, but also she is of now. And also somebody that could look mortal, but also divine, of the spirit. So both of the body and the spirit. And when I used to say this to the studio in the Universal, and they're saying, oh my God, what is this guy talking about? And then one day I saw a promo reel of Kate in a film that actually I don't think it ever released. And I said, that's her. And then they said, well, every star wants to play Queen Elizabeth. What about her?
An Australian, not known to the
Yeah.
world
Nobody knew
so
her.
far, yes.
Yeah. So I just said, no, that's her. The more they would say no, the more I would say that's her. Till my agent called me one day and said, Shekhar, it's your first film outside India. You've never done a Western film. You've never done a film over $1 million. This is $24 million. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to fire you. Oh, God.
Did you say I've been there before?
I've been there before, yeah. I've been there often.
How many times have you been fired?
Every film. And so I said, oh God, okay, let me think about it. In the morning, I woke up and said, "Arey, main to Punjabi aaga." And I called and said, let them fire me. This is a simple idea of who I am. I'm a mad Punjabi that got Kate Blanchett in.
But the West doesn't know the nuances of being a mad Punjabi. Please tell us. What does it entail?
When push comes to shove, you're willing to do anything for what you believe in. That's it, You're just going to take any risk that you want at that moment, that you need to do what you need to.
I think a round of applause for all the Punjabis here. That's what makes you an adventurer, isn't it? That you sort of will risk anything. Otherwise, you ought to have, I don't know, have you built a fortune for yourself? I'm not so sure. You ought to have.
I bet you everybody here is richer than I am.
And
So, wealth management I saw there, I'm going to call them and said, Maggie Karaun.
And the other thing, all your contemporaries, I mean, sadly, either some have passed or some like Mahesh Bhatt have just become better known as Alia Bhatt's dad. Once a very angry man, now better known as Alia's dad. Kabir Bedi, yeah, okay. Parveen Babi's passed, sadly. All your contemporaries have sort of either retired or passed. So, what is that mad Punjabi gene that keeps you youthful, if not young?
Honestly, I've never taken myself seriously. either as a filmmaker or anything. I refuse to take myself seriously. And I caught on very early in life. I was 24 when I realized that if life was not play, then it's not worth it. So I just decided at that time to go on a sense of adventure. I just left. I was an accountant in London. One day I just got up and left, not knowing what I was going to do. I took a chance on life. So I think it's because I just don't take anything seriously. I mean, don't take myself seriously. I take issues seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. I don't take my career seriously. I don't think what I've done, because if I take everything that I've done seriously, then I'm going to have to take everything I've not done seriously.
Yes,
so that's a problem.
Yes.
That's a huge problem, right?
Because I think Shekhar is one of those filmmakers whose list of films that he's not done is possibly almost as magnificent as the films he's done. He's not done Time Machine, which I think Aamir Khan still hopes to complete at some point, and I'm sure he still wants to play the lead 25 years on because he's Aamir. Then there's Long Walk to Freedom, Mandela, there's Buddha. I mean, the list of things that you
pick one,
didn't do.
I'll tell you why. Because number one, unfortunately, I'm in the position right now that if they announce my name, they can hope to get some funding. So long before we have a script, they'll announce it. Happened to so many. And then, Mandela I didn't do because, honestly, when I finally read the script, it looked like the script was written by somebody sitting in a swimming pool in Los Angeles, sitting by a swimming pool in Los Angeles. It did not.
Probably was. He probably was.
He was. I know it. And it didn't give me the feeling that it was a story, one of the most important stories in the world. And it was about apartheid. It was about a man, but not just the one-man story. The man's story was the story of apartheid. I didn't get that in the script at all. So I said, I'm not doing this. So there's a reason for everything. But you're right. But that's the nature of filmmaking. Because we dream. Not every dream comes true. So I did say yes to Buddha. I dreamt about doing Buddha. But it's come back. It'll come back. Sometimes.
Like Pani, it'll never go away.
It'll never go away. No, but Pani, every day when I pick up the papers, I said, oh my God, before we run out of water, I should make Pani.
Yeah, because actually it's like Black Mirror. What you think is science fiction is actually happening, which is the biggest tragedy of that movie.
Yeah. It wasn't science fiction, but it was in the future. But the future is now.
Talk a little about that, because that still remains one of the most significant films that you've yet not done.
So I was looking at the politics of water, and I soon realized that it's not, because we are very dramatic when we make films. It's not about sukha, not just about that. It's about what will happen and how water becomes a weapon of control. So people that have water and have access and power take it away, and then they use water to control 90% of the people. So thirst is a political weapon. You want water? You give us votes. It's as simple as that. And when I started to look at that, I realized so many places in the world that's already happening. Pani nahi hai. So pani dete hai na, pehle vote to do. It's like that. But it's not just votes. It's just about everything. Water is anything. Water is about to become one of the biggest political, social weapons in the people. Because if you look at, even George Bush had bought like tracks and tracks of water below the ground. Everybody's buying water. Even people in the West say, you want to make money? Buy water resources. Buy water, buy water. What are they saying? Let's own that one resource because we can control the world with that.
But you said water is the new oil. I thought data is the new oil.
Data is so cheap. Data is the new oil only because everybody thinks of data as these vast data farms.
Yeah.
5 years ago, the vast data farm, right? I've seen this technology at MIT. All that data in those vast data farms are going to come in one pen drive that big. That's it. Now, data will become, everybody has access to it. So you can't, it's what you do with the data. Everybody can do it now. Everybody can have it. What's the story that data is telling you? I don't understand. Why is data the new oil unless it becomes something that you can derive from it? And if everybody has it, then why is it the new oil? You can't take all the water in the world and put it in half a glass. So no, water is still the new oil, not data.
We'll wait for Pani. I have to read out some of the quotes that you've actually said in the past.
That
The
means.
years, which I'm sure you've forgotten.
Yeah.
And I have to ask you how you feel about it now. Love and sex, they're the purest form of religion. So what's more important to you now?
I said that?
Yes.
Love and sex is the purest form of religion. Yes.
You agree?
I agree.
It still is.
Still
Good.
is.
A false sense of masculinity is a terrible burden that was imposed upon the male in society, and the misunderstandings of that weight they carry leads to terrible consequences.
That was me as a Punjabi. That's what I did in Bandit Queen. I had to go and let that burden off. True, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
I'm learning not to direct my films. I'm learning that I'm merely the gardener.
That takes maturity, and we learn that over the time, because this idea that we are in control of everything, it's a falsehood. Things are happening, and you're just the gardener, you know. How do you take something or actor of the capacity of Heath Ledger or Kate Blanchett and say, act like this? I'm a bad actor, you know. So really what happens to me as a director now, it truly is, I allow it to happen. I am around with love and kind of trust, and allow what is happening on the set and capture it. That's what I do.
When you come down the mountain, you get ready to climb again. So are you at the top of the mountain or at the bottom of the mountain right now?
I'm at the bottom of the mountain, yeah, but then, you know, the top of the mountain is like success. The atmosphere is so rare, and you've tried so hard to get there, and then when you get to the top, you say, oh, I'm now on the top. Now what do? I can't climb further. What do? Okay, go down. What else will you do?
But you have a sense of great calm about coming down the mountain.
Aur karoge kya? Yeah?
You can always jump.
Yeah. Yes, I could jump, and that's where most of the mountaineering accidents happen on the way down.
Yeah.
Because they jump.
Yeah.
Right? They're not as careful as they were going up.
So you have to climb down the mountain very steadily.
Yeah, and yeah, you just have to climb down the mountain. You can slide a little bit, but you can't jump.
And the last one, my fantasies were so strong and they're now coming true. Ultimately, we create our own destinies. So do we, and what's your destiny?
No, I don't know that. I would refuse to even think about that, because once I decide what my destiny is, I'll just die. Because how could you know what's going to happen and still be alive and creative? What I was really saying that was that you have a dream, you allow it to become an obsession, right? And then once it becomes an obsession, it's no longer you. It's pulling you. So you allow the universe to take over your dream, and then it becomes its own entity. That's what I was really trying to say. And once it becomes its own entity, it has its own identity. And then the event of the film and you're both individuals struggling with each other. With the film, the event of the film and you're revolving around each other, and then you'll come together. This needs a little more exploration, but there is fundamental physics in that.
Yeah, the CA who became a physicist, who became a filmmaker, who became a thought guru.
A what?
A guru.
Guru?
A guru.
Next time my beard is gone. Okay.
Okay, one quick last round of who you would cast as the following now and why. Mugambo. Come on, our favorite character of all time.
I think that's a tough cast. Why do you think Mr. India 2 is not being made? Yeah, it's a tough. It's very difficult. You've lived with Mugambo all your life, most of it. So.
The lead role of Pani, because I've met at least 2 actors whose lives were transformed. One not very positively, and the other went slightly crazy after spending a year with you when you talked to him about Pani, but in a good way, Sushant Singh Rajput. So if you had to cast the lead role of Pani now, who would it be?
If I did find that actor, I would immediately make that film. I'm still looking for the right actor.
The couple in Masoom.
You mean replace Nasir and Shabana?
Yes.
What are you talking about? I mean, like, how do you replace them? No, you can't. You just ask me the impossible question. Yeah? You say, no, impossible. Try another question.
Phool and Devi.
That's even worse. Like, that's tough. Because you've chiseled the characters, or chiseled the actors into what they did. And now, who else can I chisel? I don't know. Go ahead.
Elizabeth.
Now, come on. The world has been trying to create Elizabeth with some other actor and not succeeded.
Yeah.
She still stands as the Elizabeth, and everybody you talk, say Elizabeth
Despite
the
the
First.
Crown and
Despite all
despite
that,
so many other
say
series.
Elizabeth the First, they'll say Kate Blanchett. Right? Right.
So now that you're a gardener, what are you planting with the Ibis trilogy, which is the new work that you're working on?
Amitav Ghosh's Ibis trilogy. I've always wanted to do something about the opium wars because it's the idea that the Industrial Revolution, the Western Industrial Revolution, was founded on opium, the opium trade. So the drug trade actually founded the Western empires. The fundamental base of Western empires was the drug trade, selling opium to the Chinese, creating opium here in Bengal, and then the Great Famine of Bengal, because suddenly one day they stopped. 7-8 million people died of hunger. But the whole thing, when you look upon it, the East India Company and all the other traders, the Western traders, they were the first multinationals, if you like, that depended on the drug trade to fund their economies. And that's why I'm so fascinated by it. That's the first time it happened.
And there's that colonialist in you that is always excited by these stories, isn't there?
Anti-colonialist. I mean,
Anti-colonialist, yes.
absolutely. I like, come on. I almost became a babu, right? Because of the kind of education I was given.
So this is your revenge against mother country.
If you just look at Elizabeth, we were all either Indians, I was Indian, and Australians,
Yes,
most of us.
yes.
So Kate used to constantly say in the press, it's the revenge of the colonized.
Also, Will, sorry, just the last question. I think Will, which not too many people have seen here, but I really urge you to go and watch it. It's a TNT series. It's on the early William Shakespeare. And it's a recreation of England, which is quite remarkable. And you see it recreated in the Oscar-winning favorite this time, which is grimy, dirty, full of shit, if I may say so, on the streets. And really, again, is that the revenge of the anti-colonialist in you, or just a fascinated guy telling the story that really not too many people know?
Not that too many people know what he was like. In fact, we also had to create a lot of conjecture that he actually was a secret Catholic. But every time that I saw 16th century England on screen, it would look like one great thing, and then they'd get into a palace, and that would be the story. I actually created 16th century England, to my production designers, what pictures I took for them was Dharavi.
Super.
That's what I created on. Like, look, this is what it must have looked like.
And that's what it really does look like.
It's where it came. The colors of Dharavi,
Yeah.
the individuality of Dharavi, the grime of Dharavi,
Yeah.
the close-knit community of Dharavi. It was all. I just had 300 pictures of Dharavi that I gave them. I said, make it look like this.
That's really what makes Shekhar Kapur so unique. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shekhar.
Thank you.